At this time, we will have Ms. Shadonna Baker-Lee to come forward and introduce our speaker.
Good morning. Good morning. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Stella Payton. Stella Payton is the founder and CEO of Making People Priority Consultant Group. Over the past 25 years, she has worked with many organizations such as Apple Computer, FedEx Kinko's, AmeriCorps, and TurboTax, just to name a few. Her experience in the field of training and development is broad and extensive. She has expanded the services of Making People Priority to include developing resources for churches and other nonprofit organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you motivational speaker, author, facilitator, singer, songwriter, mother, and my soror, Ms. Stella Payton.
Good morning. Oh, no. You gotta talk to me like you're live. Good morning.
Good morning.
I am so excited to be with you today, and it doesn't look like, well, I guess not. So, how about I just told it? Okay. I'm excited to be here today. I'm thankful that God opened doors for me. I grew up in South Mississippi, lived on the West Coast, and then the Lord brought me back to take care of my parents. Last year, my father went home to be with the Lord. My mom left in 2007, and when my mom left, we all cried, and we missed her so much. And when my dad left, we got mad with my mom for going first. Oh, don't y'all laugh like y'all ain't got no relatives like that. But then my father went home to be with the Lord because my mom had spoiled him. And so I was left with the wonderful joy of being my father's provider until he went home to be with Jesus last year. And when he left, I told my mother, he's yours again. Well, I'm excited to share this event with you. I'd like to start out by telling you guys a little story. This was so cute. It was something that I remember from many years ago. But there was a little girl who walked into her mother's bedroom one day, and her mother was getting all of this paraphernalia together, and she had creams on this side, and she had cucumber slices on this side, and she had some pink stuff here, and then she had some stuff for her lips, the lip conditioner. And so the little 3-year-old walked into the room, and she walked up to the counter, and the mother was carrying all this stuff in the bathroom, and as most 3-year-olds will say, she looked up to her mom, she said, "What you doing?" And so her mom looks down, she says, "Oh, honey, mommy is putting this stuff on her face because it's gonna make me beautiful." And so she gets the cream and she's putting on the pink cream, and then she puts on the white cream on her lips. And so while the 3-year-old is in the bathroom, at first she's down on the floor, and then she climbs up, you know how they do, climbs up on the toilet to stand. She let the lid down, stands on the toilet. Now she's leaning over the counter, and now the mom is taking the cucumber slices and she's putting it over her eyes and rubbing this, and she makes the little lather with the cucumber, the little lather cream, you rub the 2 pieces, and she's putting it. And so now the 3-year-old's sitting on the side of the sink, and she says, "Well, what you doing?" She says, "Oh, honey, mommy's putting this on me because it's gonna make me beautiful." And so she works, and so now the 3-year-old is really into it. She has climbed on the other side of the sink, standing on her own 2 little legs, looking really hard. And so finally the mother starts she takes off the cucumber stuff, and she takes off the scrub, and she leans down into the sink. So now the 3-year-old is on her knees, looking under the side of her mother's face, trying to see as her mother is washing all of this stuff. And so finally the mother gets all the stuff off, and she sits up and she stands in the mirror, and the 3-year-old takes her hands and puts them on each side of her mother's face and said, "It didn't work, did it?" It didn't work. It's amazing how each time the 3-year-old hero kept changing perspectives. She was on her two little legs initially when she walked into the bathroom, and as she was on her little legs and she stood there and she watched, and then she changed perspectives again and she got on her own little knees and got on the toilet. And then she said she changed perspectives again and she climbed up on the counter, and that still wasn't good enough. So then she got down and squatted down looking as her mother is bringing the water to her face because she kept trying to see. And so what I would like to share with you today is a take on a word that I'm sure you hear quite often: legacy. But not just from the perspective of history, but legacy from the perspective on the legs on which you stand and the perspective from which you see. You see, legacy hinges not on what you leave behind. Legacy has two powerful components. Legacy, the legs from which you see. You see, one of the things that I love about life is it gives us the power of perspective. In life, we have the opportunity to look at things from our own vantage point. And what's powerful about the concept of legacy and my perspective is that there are things that God has deposited into the vessel of my soul, into the contents of my life, and He has put this stuff inside of me. And I have the unique ability to do two things with legacy. I have the capacity to take what God has deposited in me and decide, what am I going to construct on the landscape of the horizon that will be there for the future tomorrow? But then I also have the capacity to look at what I'm going to leave behind me. What's my future, my past? What am I going to do with all of this stuff? So when we talk about the legacy, the legs from which you see, your perspective, I want to look at it from two vantage points. Let's first take the vantage points of what is in me. You see, a lot of times we spend our energies thinking about what we're going to leave behind, the will. You know, see, this is fresh with me because I just walked through this with, my father's death. So I understand what relatives are like when they start talking about the legacy, what they left behind. I know what it's like when they start piling up at the door, but I take that back. You probably don't have relatives like mine. Some of my relatives are probably not as astute as the typical soror in this room. Some of my relatives were probably more inclined to look and see what they could get before they, the paper on the certificate was dry. They were looking at legacy in the context of what they were going to get when she left, when he left, when Daddy was gone. What did Daddy leave me? Well, Daddy left me. Daddy said I could have this. Daddy said I could. Mama told me before she left. She said that piano over there, I left it to Shirlene. And so now Shirlene and Ray Bell fighting over the piano that ain't been tuned in 25 years. Legacy. Something that was left. But I want to challenge you to stop thinking of legacy in terms of the past. Legacy is what you have the opportunity to create and shape for the future. Let me give you a couple of powerful paradigms, powerful examples of people who use the concept of legacy, the legs on which you stand to see out onto the horizon and create something that doesn't exist for a future generation. I love Martin Luther King because we use this whole speech. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day black boys and white, we hear it and we go, oh, wasn't that invigorating and inspiring, and oh, I'm all excited about it. But that was his dream. What is your dream? When you stand on the mountaintop, the legs upon which you stand and the perspective from which you see, he created an image of how he wanted race relations in the United States of America to take shape. And he used his words and his life force and his energy to create a momentum that still shapes and moves and forces and catapults people into destiny today. And he's been gone almost 50 years. So, when you stand on the legs from which you see, what are you creating for a generation that you may never live to see? What is inside of you? What's in your package, your box, your treasure chest, the treasure chest of your own soul? What is in there? When you stand on your own two legs and you look out on the horizon, what do you have inside of us to create a vision for a future that doesn't exist yet? Martin gave us his dream. Mahatma Gandhi gave us his. Be the change in the world you desire to see. Be it, shape it, create it, make it. And so now we understand that legacy is not just about what I leave when I die. It is not about the material possessions that your family, your uncles, aunts, cousins, all of those people are going to fight over when you leave. Legacy is about when you stand on your legs and you look out on the horizon of the future. What do you see? What is inside of you, the building blocks of you that will create a perspective of change of life for the people who aren't here yet? Now, let's talk about the elements of legacy. So we realize legacy has two components. The legs from which I see, where I'm standing. It's also about what I have inside of me to construct with. I am the building blocks of society. I'm it. I am. So when society looks at me, opens up the box of my soul, takes out all the pieces, here's what's in there. Now, when you start talking about legacy in the context of the contents, the stuff in here, that's my building blocks, right? Oh, y'all get it? Nod. Yes. I know I can be intense and my energy can be somewhat encapsulating. However, I need that little amen helps the speaker keep flowing. So let's talk about the legacy within. You see, one of the things that my mother used to say, and my mother was the wisest human being I ever knew. She never got more than a third grade education, but she was just astounding to me in her ability to see and capture life and make life understand what it was supposed to do for us. See, you can live your life thinking that, oh, you know, I'm just here. But no, life has an assignment. It has an assignment for you. And so one of the things that she used to say is she said, be careful when you walk in the room, baby, because when you walk out, you're going to leave a smell behind. So everyone do this for me. I went over way back in the day, probably, and we used to have this little, remember this? Remember this? Okay, well, my mother assigned a new meaning to that because when I pledged, my mother was not happy. It wasn't something that she thought. And so when she began to understand the whole concept of sorority, she said, so be careful when you walk in the room, because when you walk out, there will be a scent left. What will it smell like? You see, we each, our legacy leaves an impression everywhere we go. Everything we touch tells someone about me. Everything I lay my hand on leaves an imprint. Every soul I touch feels something. And that's a part of my legacy. It's like when I walk in the room and I love this idea. When you walk in the room and people see you come and they go, or you walk in the room, people see you come and they go, or when you walk in the room, people go, what's your legacy? When people mention your name and they say, oh, Mary Beth Johnson, oh girl, yeah, call her. Or they mention your name, Lucy Johnson, Lisa, don't you even pick up that phone. What's your legacy? What's your legacy? Now, legacy has components. I'm going to talk about just a few of them. The components of legacy are more than just, the possessions. Let's talk about the components of legacy in terms of the imprints. One of my favorite imprints is the imprint of my contribution. In other words, what am I doing right now that the world is going to look back on and say, I am so glad that I knew. I was at a gala the other night, and Mr. Monroe, you guys know him, I'm new to Memphis, but Ballot. And we were talking about legacy of educators. And everywhere I've gone, his name, I don't even know him, I've never heard of him, but his name has left such a fragrance in the atmosphere so that when people speak his name, it leaves a scent, it leaves a yearning, it leaves a respect for what he did and the lives he touched and the people he shaped and the vision he saw, the vision that is still moving forward into a generation that he will never see his end. So, again, I ask, what is your scent? Sniff, sniff. I ask, what is your contribution? What do you bring to the table? If all of a sudden you vanished, would the world know you were gone? I mean, I'm just saying. One of the other components of understanding this thing of legacy is the legacy of fun. And you know, I have a brother-in-law who is probably the most phenomenal person in terms of understanding fun. He's a CFO, he's a retired IBMer, but when he came into our family, he made such an impact on every person in our family until we told our sister, you've been married 3 times, but if you leave him, we're keeping him and you can go. Okay, that's the difference. And he had such a broad perspective. I remember when he would come, when he first started showing up around our family, and my sister first started dating him, he would show everywhere he went. He had a book. He had a book. And so one of the imprints, one day he was sitting down and my son was about 10 years old, and my son walks up, he says, what are you reading? He said, how can you read? He says, reading is exciting. So he starts having this conversation. So one day, out of the blue, I look up and my son walks in with this book. And I'm going, my child is reading. To this day, who the same child who's now 19 reads books. I don't even read books this thick. But the imprint that his uncle left upon him was an imprint of knowledge, of understanding that this feels good, reading feels good. Another imprint that he left was the imprint of games. He liked to play dominoes. He left imprints of card games. In other words, when people pulled out the domino box, everybody got excited because they knew they were going to have some fun. So what box will they pull out? Oh, you. And will they think, oh, she is so much fun. I was really, Miss Regine is a puzzle person. And I wanted to use some puzzles, and I looked up the other day and the puzzles, some of the puzzles were gone. And I was like, I didn't get to do that puzzle. That's an imprint. It's an imprint. She's imprinted me. One small thing. Now, as I close, I want to challenge you to begin to think about how devoted you are to the legacy you plan on leaving behind. Not just in the context of possessions and things and stuff, but the imprints of your soul. When people leave the room where you were, will they feel warmth, excitement, enthusiasm? Will they feel happiness, joy? Will they feel impassioned, ignited? Or will they feel despondent, defeated, discouraged? You and I have the ability to shape souls and lives, to make deposits into people that will live for generations. And so I want to challenge you to pay attention to the legacy or the legs from which you see. Whether you are on your knees, looking down under the water, splashing on your mother's face, or whether you are sitting on the toilet, or whether you're standing on the floor, you have a unique perspective that you get to shape the world from which you stand. Nobody else can look at the world exactly as you, because you have a box of goods, a treasure chest of gifts that are uniquely designed to construct something into the future of tomorrow that will shape the lives of a generation you will never live to see. So may I ask you again, what is your legacy? Thank you.